Hello, everyone. This is one more series of Cities ABC interviews and partnerships, dialogues that we're doing with our team and partners and thought leaders around the world. So I will repeat again a bit what is Cities ABC and who we have here in the call, and we'll make a small introduction. And today we're going to be interviewing Professor Yu Xiong, that is as well co-founder of the project and as well a global academic and thought leader in these areas of cities, research, and a lot of different things that we're going to mention. So about Cities ABC, so Cities ABC came out of the need to create a global platform to unite and reinvent cities using the tools of our time, the digital tools that we have at our disposal, but that sometimes I use more for not necessarily the best things that you can do. It's a platform focused on social impact and as well in innovation, but that tries to unite thought leaders, universities, and organizations around the world to create a better narrative towards the world we're living in. And it's a very important thing given all the challenges we're facing right now, especially with COVID-19 coronavirus, because we're seeing right now, for instance, just as, and this will be done on a daily basis, but today, the 31st of March 2020, for instance, today we reach 800,000 cases official in the world. And for instance, just Friday, there were 400,000 people. And as well, if you look at the death rate, at the moment, the world death rate is 5%. So if you look at pure mathematical numbers, if this continues at this level, probably going to reach 10 million to 20 million. This is official numbers in the next couple of days. And if that rate continues like this, and according to some scientists, we might go to 50% of the world population being affected. We're talking about potential deaths of 170 million people to 200 million. And this is kind of conservative numbers because probably in Africa, hopefully we're going to find cure before that, because there would be a really tragedy, but we are in a very serious world. So coming back to the purpose of this call, an interview and as well video, is that we're trying to gather minds that are finding solutions towards what is all happening around the world. And this project initially was started as an impactful project and as well an industry-related project, but now we shifted to, of course, tackle much bigger problems that are right now on our interest. So we have in the call multiple people, but we're going to be focusing on Professor Yu Xiong that will be interviewed during this call, and as well Matt McKibben, that is a partner that is as well involved in the project. So I think just a small introduction to you, Matt, and then we go to Professor Yu, and we focus on that today.
Hi, I'm Matt McKibben. I'm really excited to be a part of Cities ABC. I've been involved in the blockchain industry and transformative tech since about 2013, and I co-founded and run Decentranet, which is my advisory and investment firm focused on positive impact, transformative and blockchain technologies, and helping startups run and expand in those areas. So really excited to be here.
Thank you, Matt. So going to Professor Yu Xiong. So I think it's an honor to have him on the team, and as well as vice chairman of the project, and as well leading the project in multiple areas, from the thought leadership to the strategy, and as well investment, and as well technology, and the academic as well. So Professor Yu, so I think you have a quite broader background, from academic to business person to thought leader, and as well to a person leading a lot of different organizations worldwide. Let's start by a bit of your background. So how did you come from China to the UK, and as well your education, and then we'll go through other questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dinis. So it's my pleasure and my honor to really be playing a very interesting part for this project, because this project is very, very meaningful, and I'm glad for my role as a co-founder and deputy chair to develop a number of initiatives. So I think so I came to UK. That's about 17 years ago, after I get my bachelor degree. So that's focused on computer science. So then I came to UK for PhD study on computing engineering for distributed system. So I got my PhD in 2008. After that, so I start to research in business, how to use computing technology, how to use mathematical modeling to help the business. So that's why now I'm a professor in a business school. Because that I have the technology background and also have some expertise in business development. So now I'm doing a lot of things focused on innovation management. So I bring my knowledge about management and technology together. As Dinis already introduced that I'm apart from the university, I also heavily involved in many companies. So these companies, they are in China, in UK, and in many other sectors also. For example, I set up the largest innovation center in London, in Liverpool Street Station. So it's called the Cocoon Global. So we have 7,000 square meters, focused on helping startups and SMEs for growth. So we basically want to help more business to be more global, more sustainable. And I also help set up the science park called Tsinghua University Science Park in north of England, which is in Newcastle. So that's becomes one of the largest science park in north of England. So for all these activities, I try to set up different platform to help the commercialization of local technologies to become global technologies. So this is some part of my work. Yeah. So if we think about other sectors that I have been involved, I have my research doing sustainability. Yeah. So I'm a fellow of the University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, and basically working with UNESCO and other organizations to develop the sustainable development goals research. So in this aspect, I'm also on some board of companies that are significantly relevant to sustainability. For example, a company called 99P Recycling. So this is one of the largest recycling company for plastics. So I'm on the board so that we help the UK to achieve reduce the plastic waste. Yeah. Of course, I'm also interested in many other areas, so maybe I do not repeat them at this stage. But I think what I want to mention here is that I really think that the Cities ABC project is very, very important, especially in the current situation, because for the COVID-19, you know, different cities, they use different lockdown strategy or other strategies, but how to coordinate the strategies, how to make the people in different cities, different locations of the world to collaborate with each other, support each other, share information with each other. This become very, very important. So this is why Cities ABC can play a very leading role in the current situation. Yeah. So this is my first answer to your first question. So quite long, right? Yeah.
So one of the questions that I wanted to talk, I think you came to the UK 17 years ago, so you are, of course, more almost a citizen of the UK right now than actually from China. But one thing that is very important is in 17 years, the Chinese economy merged to become the leading economy in the world. And of course, there's a lot of taking out the political part. We're not here to talk about politics, but could you tell us a bit how you saw, and I think that's very important, evolution from when you came 17 years ago from China at the time to now, which is a massive difference because now is leading in a lot of areas. And as well, especially the work you've been doing on the bridge between the UK and China, because I think that's particularly important to look at that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. So imagine that in 2003, when I just went to the UK, at that time, China's GDP is like 20% of the US. So you could imagine that the US never think China could become an enemy. So one partner only like 1/5 of your size, you never care about them, right? So, but if you look at the current economic scale, China is some close to 70% of the US economy GDP. So now US thinks that China become a competitor. I'm not saying it's an enemy or not, but definitely a competitor. So during the 17 years, China is developing in a very, very high speed. And because China actually have the largest population in the world, so China have a huge potential to be developed further. So that's why, so to working with China, how and why, so these are the questions keep being answered by different government, business, and people, you know. So I think if we think about what we should do, I think all the countries, they should, especially in current environment, should work with China, should work with any other countries, and should to conquer the challenges together. And we should working together to identify the solution for the real enemy, which is the virus, right? So I think China is doing very well at this moment. First, China get rid of the problem and mitigate the impact of the virus and achieved or not in how to tackle the problem, shared its experience. And also, China is helping other countries physically by providing resource and, of course, expert people to support other countries. So I think during the 17 years, China become more and more confident. But I think that confidence comes from a friendly way, not in a challenging way. It's not a threat, but also there should be an important friend to other countries. Yeah.
So one of the things, just coming back to the layers, so if you see the development, especially in the last 17 years, and for instance, your experience in the UK, working and studying in the UK, but as well the relationship with China, how would you see that you see the transformation in the world, especially from offline to digital, and as well all these different areas, and as well in the academic world, because you can initially study the bachelor in China, and then in bachelor you did your masters and most of the studies and PhD here in the UK. Can you tell us about that? Because I think that's particularly important for demystifying a lot of the myths that we have around the world about China and the rest. And I think we only kill the myths when we talk about the problems and the challenge that people have. Can you talk about your experience, your personal experience in universities, making the relationships and this kind of layer of experience?
So you mean how the universities, they working with China? So
yeah, no, your experience from a student in China to a student in UK, and then the relationship as a teacher afterwards, and as well the relationship, because I think that's very important to demystify. I think right now we try to put things in a box, like you said, and I think there's a lot of prejudice about everything. Because, for instance, right now, if you look, like you said, China 17 years ago was 20% of the US economy. Now it's the same size, and probably, and in 2030 or 40 is going to pass the US. And for instance, India is going to be the second economy, and actually the US is going to be the third economy in the world, according to most of the studies. And actually, for instance, Indonesia will be the fourth. So that's kind of a lot of changes as we speak. So just on that level of the transformation that you saw from your experience in China and UK, because you've been based in the UK, how do you see that transformation and the rhythm of path of transformation, especially in the experience, day-to-day experience?
I think, I have been a student. I was a student in China, and I was a student in the UK. Actually, I take a teacher's role in both countries also. I still lecture in China and also lecture, of course, in the UK. I do feel that there is a very big difference compared to two countries. But in the meantime, China is developing, is changing, and the changes made in China is more than it made in the UK, because China always want to learn from the Western countries about how to improve its education system. For example, the student in China, like 17 years ago, so basically they are not so creative. So like my time, so every student just listen to what the teacher said. If the teacher told them to do this assignment, they will have no challenges. They also only recite what is given on the textbook. So they don't need to creative new answers. So, but in the UK, the students are encouraged to give their own thinking, own idea. So, but in this regard, China realized that it's more good for the society if we use creativity thinking. But if you think about, it's reasonable for 17 years ago, China adopted the following style. Following style means that the student always follow the teacher. But now students they don't need to follow the teacher now, because they are told that they should learn many more things apart from the textbook. They also need to create some robots, create some programs for themselves. And I think it's consistent to the China's national strategy. So 17 years ago, China's national strategy is made in China. So everything we just learn from the Western countries. We don't need to innovate. We don't need to create. So we want to best engineers to really develop the product. So people design and we follow. But now that China realized that we cannot only do made in China, we should do something like created in China. So we need to train the student to be more creatively. So in that way, the education system changes. So that's why the student in China, they become more and more aggressive compared if in the view of the teacher. The student always challenge the teacher. So this is the changes that I could observe. So from academic side, as a teacher, I can also think that 17 years ago, the Chinese academics, they are not required to publish in the international leading journals. Of course, it's good that you can publish your research in very top international journals, but not many of them could because of the education approach. But in the UK, we constantly focus on publishing the world leading or international excellent level of academic journals. So people competing with each other in research in the top level. But now you can see the Chinese researchers, unlike 17 years ago, now they are trying to transform themselves to be more global thinking. So more and more Chinese, they publish in the leading journals in the world perspective. Yeah, so I think that there is a significant change, no matter as a student or as a teacher in China. And so that's why I think the future and the potential of the China is very, very significant. Yeah.
So on that level, and passing to your work with universities, so you are a fellow of Cambridge. You've been working with a lot of universities. Right now, you're going to be as well associate dean with the
Sorry. Yeah.
So could you tell us about your work from precisely that work in the study in the UK, doing your PhD, and right now being from Cambridge to these different universities and business schools that you are involved in, as well the relationship with China, because I think it's interesting, the relationship with the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from when I was a postdoc fellow in University of York, I start to look at how to help business. At that time, I working with AstraZeneca, Robinson Brothers, Smith & Nephew, this sort of pharmaceutical companies. And I find that in UK's academia, it's very, very encouraged that we always connect our experience, our expertise with the real industry. So after that, I went to Queen's University, which is in Northern Ireland, Belfast. And from there, I work with Bombardier, work with SAP, and working with Dow Chemical. And so I gathered more experience of working with the industry, and I get expertise about how to actually help in the industry. There is a model of how we bring the academic expertise to the industry. After that, I went to University of East Anglia, so as an associate professor there. So I actually joined a company called Adapt Group, as this group is wholly owned by the university. It's famous for climate change, and it have a funding of 15 million pound for venture capital fund called the Low Carbon Innovation Fund. So as a director of this company, so I help investment and help development of any technology or company focused on sustainability. So that's why making me more feel how UK universities, they feel it's the importance of helping business, so actively involved in business. So then my role in Cambridge University as a fellow of the Institute for Sustainability Leadership also involved in helping the research and other activities relating to sustainability. So for all this, I feel that as a UK academic, it's really provided me a lot of freedom, and I can always share ideas with very, very inspiring people and inspiring companies, and always touches leading technologies. So I do think that the environment is very, very good. But one thing did make me think it's different if we compare my experience in UK universities with China, is that UK's academics, because of the tenure, because of the permanent contract, so academic can be very how can I say, can be very powerful. Okay, so if you doing your thing, you can have your own autonomy doing many other research. However, when you face students, UK academics actually have to be very, very cautious, very careful how the way you deal with students. It's differently. It's very, very different compared to China. In China, the teachers, they may not have a lot of freedom in a lot of things in research or other things, but they are very, very, very powerful if they deal with the student. Okay, so this is one of the big difference I can sense as a teacher that have experience in both of the countries. Yeah, so I do think that the UK approach could be very, very how can I say, it's like a mode, and the Chinese universities, they may follow in near future.
So on purpose of time, and I think we try to keep around the half an hour interview. So
Yeah.
you've been having a huge work with both the entrepreneurial and corporate world, and as well with the UK government and the Chinese government. Can you tell us a bit about that and some of the highlights? So for instance, you've been part of the UK government, a couple of groups of work with the UK trade. You were as well part of you are the executive chairman of the China Innovation and Development Association. And how do you do that bridge, and how you see, especially to position a bit more a positive between geopolitics and as well work bridges? How do you see that work, and as well, can you tell us a bit about that work?
Yeah. Yes, it's very challenging to really develop the international collaboration, especially consider the context between China and the UK. In China, the culture and the system is quite different because in China, the culture, they rely on guanxi. People rely on guanxi, which is trust, the Chinese style of trust, so that you can really push things forward. In UK, there is a very mature credit system, so you could work with anyone you may not know, but they have a good credit system. So in that way, I have to explain the difference when I forge collaborations, no matter for government, for university, or for business. For example, I was on the Department for Business, Energy, and Industry Strategy Board. So that we call the China-UK Innovation Expert Board. We have 5 people, and we actually advise the government about how we should develop the innovation collaboration partnership with China. And on that role, I helped many UK's policymakers and business people to actually reach agreement in a very challenging context. Okay, for example, I set up the 2 innovation center or science park in the UK, and the process is very, very complicated. But eventually, my team and myself actually played a very important part to make that happen. Also, if we talk about blockchain, I'm on the UK's all-party parliament group on blockchain as one of the 14 expert board member. From there, so I'm bridging the 2 parties about the different opportunities, informations, and changes the opportunities and the informations into a solid project. Okay, so I think I could win the trust not only from UK but also from China, and I personally win the trust from 2 parties because I need to understand both parties and spend time with the 2 parties and explain the different opportunities using each other's language. Yeah. So I think the same apply to the university or business collaboration. Yeah. So I do think it's very challenging to really see a successful China-UK partnership. But I think more and more people is doing this more experientially. Yeah, I think the platform citiesabc will bring those sort of people who have multiple background, cultural background, and the language background together and connect the people not physically by transportation or logistics, but by mind and thinking and knowledge and information. So I think the platform citiesabc will bring many more people like us to help the globalization. Yeah.
So on that level, and coming back a bit to your Magna Carta project, so you and your group bought the Magna Carta Island, which is quite symbolic. And which is, can you tell us about that project, and then we'll talk a bit about blockchain. I would like Matt to get on board as well, because as well a blockchain thought leader. But so can you tell us how did it come to the idea of the Magna Carta Island and a blockchain island, which is a fantastic metaphor as well, especially with the Magna Carta, which is part of our vision for the citiesabc.
In 2015, so we acquired this island, and we established a company called the Magna Carta Island International Innovation Center, so which run this island actually. So I'm the president of this center, and we trying to make best impact, positive impact from this very historic Magna Carta. So we think that 800 years ago, King John was kidnapped to this island, and the 26 noble people, they didn't kill King John, but let him agreed with this constitution. So this is so-called the greatest documentary forever for all the human history. So which impact the human society during the past 800 years ago. And this led to the decentralization for the first time in the human history for political power. So the king eventually distributed the power to other people, and more people get the power. And I feel this is exactly the same of what blockchain should do. So we now see blockchain can distribute finance power, and more and more people they may not rely on the central bank. They may not rely on other centralized organizations. We don't need a commercial bank as well if we apply blockchain technology. People trust themselves, trust the data, trust each other's data. So that will give the power back to people, give the value back to people. And that's why I think that the blockchain is the internet's Magna Carta. And actually, as we could say that US and China, they are quite leading in blockchain applications. And even the Chinese president talk about blockchain in China, and because they realize that blockchain can deeply impact and change the society. But what UK should do, I think UK, because of the Magna Carta, make UK in a very, very different position, very unique position, because UK has needed the decentralization of political power, and this experience is very unique and very precious, and the UK should share this experience and make good use of this experience, the mentality of British people to lead the development of blockchain, how blockchain should impact our society, how blockchain should decentralize the internet, because the current centralized the internet is very centralized. We rely on Amazon, we rely on Facebook, we rely on many other leading players such as Google, because we think they are the one can provide more credit than individual. But however, if we apply blockchain technology, so we don't rely on them. We can spread the wealth, we spread the value across ordinary people. Every people have their own data to be shared, to be carried with them. And people pay for the data become very, very valuable. Yeah. So that's why I think for our Magna Carta Island, I want this island to be a blockchain island, and can bring the world thought leaders to this island to discuss, like Davos. So bring the economic forum, and our island is a very symbolic island that can bring top level blockchain discussions. And plus, Magna Carta Island is a British historic venue. The Queen already planted a tree on this island, as well as her father. But now, we as a group of international people, which is Chinese from China, and we recognize the value that the island could provide. So we think the island in its nature already become international. So that's why I always claimed this is not only an island of history, it's also an island for future and an island for blockchain.
I really like that analogy of the Magna Carta being, the modern day agreement. It is kind of like an internet of agreements where we can create our own self-sovereign identities and our own self-sovereign money and our own self-sovereign contracts with each other. And the Magna Carta was one of those really big things in history that allowed for that self-sovereignty. So that analogy is very apt, and I really love the vision for creating, a blockchain-based Davos for the self-sovereign era on the island. I've never been there before, but I'm really excited to.
Very welcome to join, to visit us after the coronavirus period.
Yeah. Once we're allowed to travel again, for sure. Maybe the first one is digital. Who knows? Maybe there's one we speed up. But I also like to use the analogy that we're able to kind of like fork institutions here. So if you look at the kind of the religious Reformation, we reformed an entire institution in Christianity, where they said, hey, look, we want to open source and fork an institution, and we want to create our own, right? For that, and now we're open sourcing and forking money and governance and identity, and those the central institutions may still exist in a way, but we don't necessarily have to use them. And so the open sourcing and forking and allowing people to create their own institutions and have self-sovereignty is something that I'm really passionate about as well. So thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so I think to wrap up just a couple of last questions, and Matt, feel free to get in. So when we're talking about the Cities ABC, and we're writing right now a Cities ABC Magna Carta, or a Cities ABC 4AR Magna Carta that is precisely speaking in the same vision and strategy that you have for the island, but trying to do this through a platform that can enable people and looking besides blockchain to technologies that are the fourth industrial revolution technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, a lot of things related in biogenetics and things like that we are right now more important than ever.
Yeah.
So, and fintech, of course. So how do you see that from your experience in working with governments and as well working with universities and academics, how do you see this Magna Carta vision in practice? Because I think one of the things we've been seeing right now is, and you are a man of theory and practice, so that's why I think we have a good team here. But I think one of the things that is really important right now is coming up with beacon of peace and beacon of hope. Because I think right now, as I start this interview, is that the world is going through a massive change. Okay, probably the biggest in the last 200 years if you look purely on data. But as well, the consequences are bigger because 200 years ago, or even just 100 years ago, the death rate, for instance, was 40 years old. So that means we would be already probably in our death rate, more or less. So, but now we're talking about the death rate is around 80 to 90 years old, depends on the country, or 70s. And I think that means we double the life expectancy, but we're not prepared for the consequences of what is happening, especially the death rate and everything else. So how can we come up, and I think especially from your experience, with things that through Cities ABC, through our platform and network worldwide, we can actually create hope and create solutions for the problems we have. And I think that's one thing we all need to come up more with hope and solutions.
Yeah. So in my view, so the Magna Carta is a symbol that the people share the same value with each other and act on it. It becomes a constitution that everyone follow. And in nowadays, we do need such kind of guidance for all human beings to create the same value. So the value should really impact everyone. So it's not US think they are the greatest country, and maybe EU think EU can make their own decisions, or China have its own different system. So we want everybody, every country to understand each other. We need to create some mutually supported rules, okay, so that we can tackle the challenges. Just like Dinis, you said that it's now we're facing this challenge that we never faced this sort of challenge in the past 200 years. But I do think that if we can do the thing correctly and we use this opportunity, change this challenge into an opportunity that guides the next development of the human society. We use blockchain technology, we use 4IR technology, and we use this one to reduce the difficulties of managing the society, make it easier to share the value, and make it easier to manage in the country or self-manage the country, and the cost of running the society become low, so people create more transparency. I think the society will become a better shape, and it's very good that it's time for the people to rethink about whether what we have been doing in the past decades is correct or not. We focus on money, we focus on some of very selfish value, okay? And is that true? Is that the our own value? Is that more important than someone else's value? So we need to define that. Use a powerful concept. So that's why I think that our Magna Carta approach, we will integrate with the cities ABC. We bring the leaders in city, in country, they together, they come to really think about what should be the real value for all people. So we will think about how the human tackle the difficulties together, and how to really collectively provide a better society more for well-being. Yeah, so for the happiness of people's life, not only for the capital, right? People should not only work for capital. If now we can say UK have adopted very, very good policy that the country is not only consider the request from the capitalist, right? So from the leading the business people, they want to open their stores, they want to earn money. If they close one day, they lose money. But human life, human value, human happiness, human health, maybe these are more important than cash. Okay, so but now the country is doing the right thing, but we should make all of such value to be agreed, that we should identify what is really important to people. Okay, the 17 SDGs is very, very important, but we need to let more people to accept that. Yeah, so that's why I really, really think I'm in a very, very strong and meaningful team in Cities ABC.
Thank you so much. I think we'll wrap up now. We've been around 50 minutes. There's a lot of other things we're going to put in the interview email, in the interview, a list of the things related with your profile, and as well there's a profile of yours in openbusinesscouncil.org, and there's a lot of other things where people can find you. And of course, you'll be very active on Cities ABC and all the different things you're doing. So I appreciate all the time, and we'll have much more talks. Thank you so much, Matt, as well. And we'll talk in the next one more in detail. So, thank you.
Thank you.